Lotus is a famous name in Formula 1, but their history is quite complicated. Their first race entry was in the 1958 Monaco Grand Prix, and they competed in 490 more races until their final entry in the 1994 Australian Grand Prix. The Lotus name would then return in 2010 with Jarno Trulli and Heikki Kovalainen, but this team would only last for 2 seasons. In 2012, the Renault team was renamed the Lotus F1 team, but was completely unrelated to either iterations of Lotus. The new Lotus F1 team would feature many well-known drivers, including Kimi Raikkonen and Romain Grosjean, who drove for the team in their first season. In total, Lotus F1 would enter 77 Formula 1 Grand Prix, before returning to the Renault F1 name in 2016, which would eventually become Alpine, the team that competes today. Already on this game, I've added Renault and their previous name Benetton back into Formula 1, so let's add another evolution of the Enstone team and simulate through 10 seasons with Lotus. But before we begin, YouTube says that almost 93% of my viewers are actually not subscribed to my channel. So if you haven't already, please press the subscribe button and drop a like if you enjoy. Also press the join button to become a channel member and you'll get access to exclusive perks such as early access to my videos and a special role in my Discord server. Upon their return, the Lotus F1 team will utilise the driver pairing of rookie Victor Martins and former Lotus race winner of Pastor Maldonado. The 2024 season, or the first season of this simulation, will see McLaren take the Constructors' Championship, leading Ferrari and Red Bull, which has a very strong chance of happening in real life. Lotus have a pretty solid first season back in the sport, finishing in P6, ahead of the Alpine team despite ending on the same number of points. It was a more rocky return for Pastor Maldonado, who will not score any points, finishing in P17, while Victor Martins has a pretty impressive debut season, scoring all of the team points and finishing in P11. The Drivers' Championship will include the 3 drivers who are fighting for it in real life, with the Ferrari driver of Charles Leclerc coming up shortest after he only takes 3rd place. Second place will only finish 17 points behind, but in their first season it will be Max Verstappen who will finish runner-up to the newest Drivers' Champion, as the McLaren driver of Lando Norris takes his first ever driver's title. It was actually incredibly close all season, with both Lando and Max finishing the season with 6 race wins each, with Charles Leclerc taking 3 race wins and Hamilton taking just the 1. Now at the end of the season we will see 2 driver retirements. Firstly, Pastor Maldonado, after he agreed to return to the sport for only 1 season, is replaced by Jack Doohan, who will make his Formula 1 debut in season 2. Daniel Ricciardo will also be leaving the sport and retiring, with Kevin Magnussen making the jump over to the VCARB team. The strange moves have then started, as Oscar Piastri leaves the championship winning McLaren team in favour of Haas. This allows Théo Pourchaire to race for the McLaren Formula 1 team after his eventful adventure into IndyCar. There will also be some slight regulation changes, as the powertrain department will have to adapt for season 2. The slight regulation change and the driver change at McLaren meant that they could only finish as high as 4th place, with Ferrari taking the top spot while Mercedes overtake Red Bull. Lotus have a lackluster season as they drop down to P9, but with 2 very inexperienced drivers, what else would you expect? Jack Doohan would finish his debut season in P21, only beating Logan Sargent, while Victor Martins will drop down to P15. Despite finishing in P4, McLaren still managed to get their driver into the top 3, as Lando Norris will take the bronze medal after his championship winning season last year. The drivers will replicate the Constructors' Championship, as the Mercedes driver of George Russell will finish in P2, behind another brand new world champion in the form of the Ferrari driver of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc would deservedly win the title this season after taking a whopping 9 race wins, with George Russell taking 4 for himself. Lando Norris would finish above Max Verstappen in the standings despite Max winning 2 races, while Lando Norris would only win 1. There'll be no regulation changes this year, and there'll be only 1 driver move as Valtteri Bottas retires, with the Kick Sauber team bringing in Dennis Hauger for season 3. Mercedes continue to improve on their runners-up finish last season by returning to the top of the Constructors' Championship in the 3rd season. Lotus cannot improve on last season and will remain down in the bottom, finishing in P9. Jack Doohan does improve on his finishing position up to P19, while Victor Martins actually drops a position and finishes in P16. Red Bull managed to rise up to 2nd place with their driver Max Verstappen helping them after his 3rd place finish. Mercedes did dominate this season with a 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship, with the 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton finishing in 2nd place, behind another brand new champion in the form of George Russell. Russell managed to win 10 out of 16 races this season, with both Hamilton and Verstappen taking 2 wins each. Fernando Alonso is also able to grab that long-awaited 33rd race win, with Pierre Gasly also adding another race win to his tally. And after getting that race win, Fernando Alonso has decided to retire from Formula 1 once again, with the Alpine driver of Esteban Ocon moving to Aston Martin. Oscar Piastri would then finally be able to make his move to Alpine after the fiasco at the end of 2022. Yuki Tsunoda will then leave the Red Bull family as he moves to the Haas team, while Jack Doohan will leave Lotus to join VCARB. Lotus will then sign another French driver, with Théo Pourchaire partnering Victor Martins next season. Lance Stroll will then move to McLaren, with Ayumu Iwasa being given his debut at Aston Martin. Also at the end of the season, all the performance departments will be subject to change, which could cause a massive shake-up next season. Despite the many changes, McLaren managed to remain on top of the Constructors' Championship, with Ferrari in second place and Red Bull dropping down to P5. Lotus will struggle with the regulation changes and will drop another place, finishing this season in P10. Both drivers failed to score any points this season, with Martins finishing in P19 and Pourchaire in P20, finishing only above the Kick Sauber drivers. After a 4th place finish last season, Lando Norris is able to gain a position and manages to finish the season in 3rd place. Lando would finish just a single point behind 2nd place, the former champion of Charles Leclerc. That means that Russell is able to retain his Drivers' Championship, with the top 3 all being champions in this simulation. Russell had a 71 point gap to Lando Norris, despite both drivers winning 5 races this season. Both Ferrari drivers would win races, as Carlos Sainz would win twice, with Leclerc winning just the once. Esteban Ocon and Lewis Hamilton were both able to add another win to their record, with Alex Albon being the newest race winner, but he is also the latest retirement. Ayumu Iwasa will move to the Williams team, with Théo Pourchaire getting an Aston Martin drive next season. Yuki Tsunoda and Logan Sargent will swap cars for next season, with Victor Martins also leaving Lotus but won't find another F1 seat this season. This means that Lotus have to sign an entirely new driver lineup, so they decide to go with the 2024 Premier F2 lineup and the newest F1 drivers, Oliver Bearman and Kimi Antonelli. After winning in the first season, McLaren have finally returned to the top of the Constructors' Championship with a 70-point lead over Mercedes. Lotus also managed to gain a position, finishing season 5 in 9th place. With both drivers making their debut, they managed to improve on last season with a P17 and P18 finish, ahead of both Kick Saubers and both Haas cars. There seems to be a pattern with Max Verstappen here, as he only seems to be in the top 3 in odd seasons, Season 1, Season 3 and Season 5. But he finishes just over 20 points behind the 2nd place of George Russell, who fails to win his 3rd consecutive title. Now this is due to Lando Norris winning a total of 7 races to win his 2nd Drivers' Championship this season. George Russell did put up a fight though, winning 5 races, while Verstappen, Hamilton, Carlos Sainz and none other than Lance Stroll would all win just 1 race this season. There will be 2 drivers retiring at the end of this season, with the first being race winner Carlos Sainz and the other being the Red Bull driver of Sergio Perez. Red Bull signed Frederic Vesti to fill their open seat, with Dennis Hauger being signed to drive for Ferrari. The open Kick Sauber seat is then given to the Sauber Academy graduate Zane Maloney to make his debut in Season 6. There will also be some more regulation changes to both the chassis and durability departments heading into the next season. The small regulation changes wouldn't really affect the top of the Constructors' Championship, with McLaren retaining their title ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull. Lotus have an incredible season and managed to achieve a 5th place finish, with Oliver Bearman recording the team's highest finish in the simulation with P7, while Kimi Antonelli isn't too far behind, finishing in 9th place. Lewis Hamilton will just miss out on the top 3, finishing behind his teammate of George Russell, who will finish just 2 points behind 2nd place himself. The 2nd place actually goes to none other than Lance Stroll, after he would go on to win a total of 2 races. The Drivers' Championship will be then won by the reigning champion of Lando Norris. Lando would win a total of 11 races this season, finishing almost 100 points ahead of his teammate. George Russell would also stand on the top step of the podium on 3 occasions for his 3rd place. The end of this season will have an intense shake-up in the driver market after Charles Leclerc retires, bringing Carlos Sainz out of retirement and back to Ferrari. A total of 6 drivers are dropped by their respective teams, with Lance Stroll, George Russell, Théo Pourchaire, Oscar Piastri, Logan Sargent and Jack Doohan all being left without a team. Frederic Vesti will leave Red Bull to join the McLaren team, with Victor Martins return to the sport to fill his seat. Zane Maloney moves away from Kick Sauber into the Mercedes team, with Enzo Fittipaldi making his debut at Sauber. Dennis Hauger leaves Ferrari for Alpine, with Arthur Leclerc driving for the team his brother just left. Jack Crawford will sign for Aston Martin, Derubila will sign for Haas, and Isaac Hadjar will make his debut at VCarb next season. After only half a season, a handful of teams have decided to change their drivers, with Logan Sargent replacing Enzo Fittipaldi, George Russell returning to Mercedes ahead of Zane Maloney, and Jack Doohan taking Arthur Leclerc's seat at Ferrari. Jack Crawford is also dropped by Aston Martin, with Frederic Vesti moving teams once again, and McLaren will bring Sergio Perez out of retirement to finish off the season. Even with the shake-up and changing drivers in the mid-season, McLaren managed to retain their Constructors' Championship, scoring 690 points out of a possible 704. Lotus continued to improve, with the team managing to secure a P4 finish in the standings. This is largely due to Oliver Bearman's successful P6 finish combined with the P11 of Kimi Antonelli. Lewis Hamilton just missed out last season, but will manage to reach 3rd position this year despite his change in teammates. Frederick Vesti would change teams halfway through the season, but would eventually take a P2 in the championship, finishing behind the once again reigning champion of Lando Norris. It doesn't look like much can stop Lando Norris at the moment after he managed to win 14 out of 16 races, with Frederick Vesti taking 2 wins while he was still at McLaren. Despite only being signed in the mid-season, Jack Doohan is replaced at Ferrari with former Kick Sauber driver Enzo Fittipaldi. Sergio Perez will go back into retirement after assisting McLaren for half of the season, with Théo Pourchaire once again returning to the Papaya team. Kevin Magnussen will also be retiring from the sport, allowing Oscar Piastri to return to Formula 1 for a V-carb drive. There will also be a big change up with the aerodynamics, powertrain and durability departments all being hit going into next season. We're now into Season 8 and the McLaren team will remain on top, scoring slightly less points this season but still winning the title nonetheless. Lotus continues to make improvements with the team finishing in P3 this season, with Behrman finishing as high as 4th place ahead of Lewis Hamilton, while Kimi Antonelli will rise to P8 ahead of Max Verstappen. After returning to Mercedes last season, George Russell returns to a 3rd place finish in the Drivers' Championship behind a McLaren 1-2. Upon his return to McLaren, Théo Pourchaire has a very successful season, finishing in 2nd place but behind his teammate, the now 5-time champion of Lando Norris. Norris' domination continues after he takes a whopping 11 race wins, with his teammate being successful on 2 occasions. Oscar Piastri was also able to take a race win on 2 occasions, with George Russell winning just a single race this season. Now after a very successful season, Oliver Behrman will leave Lotus F1, unfortunately not finding another team. Multiple time race winner Oscar Piastri will join the Lotus team, with Dennis Helger moving to V-carb. Enzo Fittipaldi will leave Ferrari, with the team rehiring Jack Doohan once again. The last open seat at Alpine will then go to the returning boy from Barbados of Zane Maloney. Nothing is stopping McLaren as they win another Constructors' Championship in the penultimate season, ahead of Mercedes, with Williams making a leap up to P4. In a very close midfield battle, Lotus will drop down to P7, despite Piastri finishing P7 himself, while Kimi Antonelli drops down to P15, scoring 20 points. Last season's runner-up will drop down to 3rd place as Théo Pourchaire loses out on the position to the Mercedes driver of George Russell. And with no surprise, Lando Norris will continue to win the Drivers' Championship after winning a total of 11 races this season. Théo Pourchaire will fall short after George Russell would win 3 races, while 4th place Frederick Vesti is also able to win 2 more races. We will also definitely see a different Drivers' Champion next season, as the most successful driver in recent years, Lando Norris, will be retiring from Formula 1 just before the final season. None other than Max Verstappen will be making the jump from the lackluster Red Bull car into the very fast McLaren. Pierre Gasly will be returning to the Red Bull family to replace Verstappen, with Tsunoda moving into Alpine and Oliver Behrman returning to Formula 1 with Williams. Victor Martins will also be leaving F1, with Jack Doohan leaving Ferrari once again, but this time moving to Red Bull. Ferrari will somehow for some reason bring Lance Stroll out of retirement to drive for the final season. There will also be some small regulation changes, but this will only affect the chassis department going into the final year. Even with the regulation changes and driver moves, McLaren will remain on the top of the Constructors' Championship, equaling Ferrari's total of 6 wins in a row. Lotus have a strong end to the simulation after Piastri and Antonelli helped them to a P4 finish, with Piastri finishing in P5, securing a race victory along the way. Théo Pourchaire will once again finish this season in 3rd place, but will take 4 race wins, finishing behind the Aston Martin driver of Frederick Vesti, who would take 2 wins for himself. The Drivers' Championship is won by a new name for this simulation, but not for the sport, as the new McLaren driver of Max Verstappen picks up right where Norris left off, taking 8 race wins to secure the title. The final race win is then taken by the returning Red Bull driver, as Pierre Gasly will stand on the top step to round off this simulation. I mean, it's pretty obvious to see who the star of this simulation was, but let's have a look at the stats for the 10 seasons as a whole to see who flew under the radar and who overperformed. Starting off, there was only 3 different teams who would win the Constructors' Championship, with Ferrari winning just 1, Mercedes winning 2, and McLaren winning a staggering 7 titles in just 10 years. There were 4 different drivers who would score enough points to take a Drivers' Championship, and they all belonged to one of the 3 teams previously mentioned. Charles Leclerc would take his first title while driving for Ferrari, and Max Verstappen's only title here was driving for McLaren. George Russell would win both his titles in the same season that Mercedes won their titles, with Lando Norris finishing just behind Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher with a total of 6 Drivers' Championships. The Lotus simulation would provide 14 different race winners, with 4 of them winning their first race. Fernando Alonso was able to find his 33rd race win, with Ocon and Albon both winning 1 race each. Pierre Gasly added 2 more races to his tally, with Piastri, Stroll and Carlos Sainz all winning a total of 3 times. Lewis Hamilton would add another 5 race wins to his illustrious record, with Pourchaire and Frederick Vesti winning 6 races each. Charles Leclerc was able to win 13 races, Verstappen would win 19 races, with George Russell taking a whopping 31 race wins across the years. But finishing the simulation with the most wins is of course Lando Norris, who would take 66 race wins on his way to 6 drivers' titles. So that is going to wrap up today's video of adding Lotus back into Formula 1. Now if you haven't already, go and watch the previous versions of this team, being Renault and Benetton, and subscribe if you are new. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, as it helps me out a ton, and become a channel member if you just want to show a little bit of extra support. I have links to all my social media in the description, including Twitter, Instagram, and even my Discord server, so go ahead and follow me over there and join the server if you're interested. But that is going to be it from me today, so have a good day, evening or night wherever you are, and goodbye.